All right. Starting the stream here. I see people are starting to come in. Feel free to drop in the chat where you're from, what you're excited about today. Maybe what time zone you're in, too. Right now it's 9 a.m. where I am, but of course we got people from all over. We'll just give it a couple moments here before we get things kicked off. Hello from the UK. Hello. Yeah, I'm up here in Canada. Get this thing going. By the way, you're listening to music from May or May Not, composed by Hudson Bakitschke. Yes, yeah, we had a chat on LinkedIn as well. It's actually been really fun. Oh, from Alberta too. That's fun. It's been fun since starting this thing off. Yeah, getting to know people a little bit more, chatting a bit on LinkedIn. Let's see here. Let's do another track from the May or May Not. Well, I think that we can probably get started here. We do have a decent amount of people at the same time. So let me just stop that music there. Studio fade out. Okay, cool. Hi, welcome to Audio Jam. This is week 2. As you may know, we are doing this for the every Thursday for the month of May. And this is just a cool way to kind of grow together, to kind of share in the knowledge of this community. Last week was a lot of fun. Maybe some of the people that are here today also attended last week. But basically, I'm going to go through some of the sort of core tenets of like, what are we doing here? Like, what's the point of doing this, and what is it for, and kind of some rules around this. So the purpose of this is to equip you. Actually, maybe before sharing that screen, the purpose of this is to equip you to hopefully get the job that you're seeking, whatever that job might be. Whether you're currently employed, trying to get into the industry, but you're struggling with the amount of layoffs that have happened in the last little while, or you're a freelancer and you're trying to figure out what to do next. We're all kind of on this same boat, and we're learning together and we're growing together. And so I'm hoping that you'll come away with some insights, some clarity, information on the next step, what you can do to better showcase your skills and represent yourself. And there's a couple rules for this, a couple things that we want to keep in mind as we do something like this, because I do think of this as being receiving feedback is not easy, right? There's a lot of mental gymnastics that we as creative people can go through that can make feedback really difficult. But I'm hoping that these rules will kind of help lay a foundation of protection. So first, this is not for approval, it's for improvement. That means anything that I say to you, share with you, encouraging or otherwise, this is not for you to get my approval. This is for you to seek the improvement that you need for the jobs that you're seeking. Second, this is actually a new one since last week, if you joined us last week, and that is to see the framework beyond the feedback. And what I mean by that is, say that I sat with you every single day and we talked through exactly what you should tweak and change about your demo reel to make it optimal, to make it better, to improve it. If I did that, you wouldn't necessarily have learned how to do it yourself. So the goal here is that while we're reviewing, yes, something that's personal to you or personal to somebody else when we're reviewing their thing, but the idea is that I'm trying to share frameworks that you can utilize within your own work and that go beyond that individual time-stamped moment within your demo reel or on your website. These are frameworks to push you further, to push me further. Third, misinterpretation is information too. And what that means is there's going to be moments where I'm going to read your page wrong. I'm going to not notice the detail that you spent 3 hours on. I'm not even going to see it at all. And that's actually helpful because that's data. That's data for you to see, like for just a this is kind of in the tech industry language, but like a common user, a common audience member, what are they going to notice in the first few moments? And lastly here, just ego at the door. The learning is for the strong, and that's for all of us, right? I'm learning by doing these live streams. I looked back at some of the clips from the last time and I'm like, man, I could have done that differently. I could have done that better. And we're all in that same boat trying to improve ourselves. Okay, we're going to get into reviews and stuff like that in a moment. Also, people have sent questions. I'm hoping to do, this is one of the lessons from this last live stream from last week. I'm hoping to make this a little bit more interactive. And so please, if you have questions, if you have context on, say we're reviewing your demo reel or a clip, if you have some context on, hey, I'm new to the industry, I'm trying to find my first gig, or I've gotten a few gigs, but I'm not yet getting paid enough to make this full time, I can shape my feedback around that. And we can also focus on some topics that are not strictly just reviewing the specific reels. So, let's jump into it as you guys formulate your questions, but please, in the chat, this is a friendly community event. Be supportive, applaud, encourage each other. It requires bravery to do what we're doing here today. So let's make this a good time. So you can see across the tabs on the top here, we've got a lot of different stuff that we can go through. I also have some questions kind of noted off screen here. What I'm going to do is let's actually start here. with this demo. Now this, apologies, I'm just going to pull up my notes here. This came from, I believe it's Luis Octavio, if I'm saying that correctly. Apologies if I'm getting your names wrong. I'm going to be like worse than a barista here. But Luis sent this in, and let's take a look. All right, I think that I'll pause it there. So there's a couple things I think we can talk about here. On the one side, there's the audio design itself, and we can chat about that in a second. The other part is how we as audio people can support the marketing efforts behind a game. Something that I noticed right away, and I think I'm correct in this, as far as I can tell, this was actually playing back in mono. And even this is such a small issue that tends to occur, but I think it does have an impact. You know, a video editor somewhere, they grabbed the audio for this thing, they might have cobbled it together potentially. You might not have been in control of the full audio pipeline, and somewhere along the way, a mistake was made, and this thing appears to have been exported in mono. So that's something that's really important to check in on, because as we're trying to represent our work, as we're trying to, in the case of an official trailer here, we're trying to make it so that as many people as possible come, enjoy, and play the game. So something I want to encourage, and this isn't just for this example, but for all of us, if there are ways for you to get closer with the marketing team and to offer your full-fledged support when it comes to marketing needs, getting close to the producers and offering your full-fledged support for when they're doing pitch decks and they're trying to get funding and they're trying to get a publisher and everything else. There's so much power in audio to make people feel a certain way, and to have that in the marketing, in the pitch decks, in the branding, like in the way that your studio or project represents itself, is a tremendous advantage. And that's actually one of the ways that you can actually sell yourself as an audio provider to say, hey, look, a part of the benefit of having thoughtfulness behind your audio design is that it's better to get people into your game, higher ratings on Steam or elsewhere, and you're more able to communicate the emotion of this project in terms of pitch decks and things along those lines. So something I'd just like to encourage all of us in is, if you can get relationally close with the marketing team, with the producers, and help them to achieve their goals of getting more people into the game, of selling more units, of, you know, getting the publishing or the funding that they're looking for, you should definitely do that. In terms of the piece itself and the sound design and everything else, a game like this is very prone to player fatigue. The reason being, there's a lot of repetitive sounds with the balls getting hit and the whooshing sounds and everything else. And for that reason, it kind of puts a lot of pressure on us as sound designers and, you know, even composers as far as stingers and other things are concerned, to make it so that the audio is as clean, impactful, replayable, and satisfying as possible. So I'm just going to play a little bit more of this clip. I think I don't know if I'm 100% hearing this or not, but the sounds of the general movement and the hitting of the ball, it's becoming a little bit samey for me. There's a little bit of fatigue playing into it. Now, ultimately, hitting a ball sounds a certain way, and it's going to be a bit samey. So how can we create variety in our treatment of a scene to make it so that it is a little bit more engaging? When I look at a moment like this, it looks like we have sand, obviously, around a court that has probably more of that rubbery material. I'm not a material scientist. I don't know what tennis courts are all made of, but I suspect that there's more of a chance of getting that sort of sneaker squeak. Now, these are fictional characters, but this is a sound that we associate with the action of playing tennis. And so I would be curious to have a sound bank of sneaker squeaks, of even potentially with these different landscapes, having slightly different scuffing sounds that would be more appropriate to kind of concrete. And when you're dealing with cartoon characters like this, sometimes it's good to use barefoot sound libraries. If it's like barefoot on concrete, barefoot on sand, and so on and so forth, can be really good for a sort of generic cartoony sound. And then, just see if you can add a bit of variety by surface tagging. Now, for this style of game, perhaps for the budget, perhaps for the level of technical implementation that's available, that may not be as much of an option, but certainly having sound banks with a bit of variety on the strikes that are going on. I wonder if as well, is there a way, and maybe it's already in this, but a way to detect strikes that are actually a little bit more powerful? Because you're trying to get dynamicism, right? We talked about this last week, the idea of tension and release. If a big hit is going to happen, if there's a way from a technical standpoint to detect that, having a little bit more, something that's got a little more vividness to it could be a benefit. I think there's also the option of adding vocalizations potentially here. Vocalizations, grunts, exertions, efforts, all of those sounds, they add more stakes to the moment, and it's a really great way to add a little bit more realism, yes, more immersion, even in a cartoony sort of environment, and just to make it so that the player is really emotionally engaged in the weight of the game. For a project like this, and you may have done this as well, but research is such a powerful thing. So if you take those moments to say, personally, I've only played tennis a handful of times, but like to take time and watch Wimbledon and like try to understand like, why is this an internationally praised sport? Like, why do people enjoy it? And if that sport or that activity or that style of game is not your typical one, research it until you find a love for the thing, and then find those details under the details that will make the project go further. Wonderful job. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it looks like a fun game too. All right, moving on here. We have, Leandro. Okay, so Leandro joined the live stream last time. We were having some issues with the chat, which I think I rectified, and they weren't able to share their reel. So we've actually got a few options here. And this actually ties into a question here that I got from someone else. Just pulling up my notes here. It was from Alejandro, was asking, I'm trying to market myself as a video game and film composer, but I haven't found a way to embody both terms within one voice. Now, coming back to Leandro here, we've got the music composition demo reel. We've got composer and sound designer kind of lumped into one, and we have a sound designer demo reel as well. So the question behind this ends up being, how do we market ourselves if we find ourselves as more of a generalist than a specialist? Now, to share a little bit about myself, I am a generalist and I love it. I love variety. I love learning. I love curiosity and doing new and different things. It does become a challenge to market myself and to market what my company does. So how do we do that? I think that there's a few different approaches. One is the house of brands approach. This is a term from marketing, where we actually stand up multiple websites. I know some folks who have done this. where it says like, you know, here's a full and completely separate brand of so-and-so, the composer. Now, being a composer as a singular brand might be a strong benefit for you. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You might say, well, over here, here's the sound designer. Sometimes having those worlds separate is a benefit. I think that Leandro, and I'm reading between the lines here, but seeing these three reels, we're seeing that in some situations, Leandro might decide to represent themselves as a music composer and sound designer, because for a small solo project, that's going to be a benefit to them. There's other situations where sound design is the main emphasis, or where music composition is the main emphasis. I will say that at least according to the latest polls from GANG, the Game Audio Network Guild, I believe most job postings, it's about 6% of audio job postings in this last year were for music composers specifically. I found personally that often the sort of quote unquote gateway drug to someone working with me as a composer has been working with me as a sound designer and helping out with voiceover or some other thing. And I've seen that with other audio companies as well. Sorry, I'm just reading in the chat here. The reel for music composer and sound designer is only four ads. Okay, well, let's see. Leandro, where would you like us to start? Of the three, which one would you like us to maybe jump into first? And I'll grab a little drink of water before continuing on. The other ones are for video games. Oh, interesting. Music composer. Okay, great. Let's start with that then. Music composer demo reel. Let's take a look. Okay, I'm actually just going to pause there. It's often an interesting start. Okay, I would say, and we've chatted about this before, this is a principle for you to keep in mind. The principle is you have 10 seconds. And what I mean by that is whether someone comes to your website, they're checking out your video, you have 10 seconds. And that's actually probably being generous. You probably have about 3 seconds to capture their attention. Otherwise, they're going to start going rogue. They'll either leave or they'll click around. They're not going to see this as a presented sequence. And often, because we're trying to present our best foot forward at the beginning, it's important from my perspective to really trim down any kind of title card that we have at the front. The reason is twofold. One, in this case, all I heard was silence for 1, 2, 3, I'm gone, 4, 5. So we've gotten to 5 seconds and potentially I've already left, right? So we don't want that to happen. I think because this is either on your YouTube, which has your name, or it's on your website, which has your name, putting your name again, when this is a CTA, a call to action, they don't know you yet. You know, presumably they're coming and they're observing your demo reel. They don't know you yet. They're not even saying, well, tell me more. I'm interested or whatever. They're smart. They'll know how to contact you. You put this information either in the lower thirds or you put it at the end. Obviously, you'd have it on your website as well. There's a lot of different places you can put this information. By having it at the front in the first 4 or 5 seconds, there's a chance that you'll lose people. So the good news is that's an instant win for you, right? Change the arrangement of how you're presenting the information and you have a higher chance of retention and them actually getting to know your amazing skills along the way. So let's get into the actual music itself. Leandro, thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, we have a couple things that we can go into here. And remember that the goal here is to find one or two things, something like what can you do to take you from this level to this level? And whether that means for you, you're going from level 50 to level 100 is your goal, or from 5 to 6, we're all here to improve together. What I liked about it was that there was a variety of music. So that's important as a composer, right? The difference I find generally between an artist musician and a composer is that a composer showcases that they're adaptable to a few styles. Now, if you're able to specialize in a certain genre, if there's something that really lights you up and where most of your skills reside, then hanging out there is super, super helpful. In this case, with 3 songs, it was a nice amount of variety, and that's really good. Something that I'd like to encourage you and all composers and sound designers as well is that choose the projects for your reel, since these are often redesigns at this stage. Choose the projects that you want to do more of and that are your next step in your career. And what I mean by that is AAA, as an example, is exceedingly difficult to get into, right? You're talking very specialized individuals who are often, the best of the best in their craft, and they're doing this for huge studios with massive budgets. Now, if you have never, and we've all been there, if you have never done a massive budget project, doing a lower budget project is the next step in your career, right? You're getting your feet wet, right? You're getting into there. And so for that reason, sometimes it's valuable to focus your demo reel and the choice of clips on something that, one, you would really enjoy doing more of, which I'm assuming, Leandro, that's what I'm seeing here. And 2, something that's within the next step for you to accomplish. Now, let's go a little bit more piece by piece. What are things that you could improve in these 3 songs? What are the principles that we can derive from this, the lessons we can derive from this that are applicable to all of us? So for Dune, The Dark Ages, music recomposition. Okay, so we've got a sequence there that's building anticipation, right? There's a hint of mystery. There's kind of that floating note, that kind of pedal tone that's going on in the background. And then when the weapon comes out, now it's like, it's go time. So I think that all works, and that's good sequencing. What I would encourage you to do is consider how you can create variety and newness as you're going through a progression. And this is a principle that often comes from the marketing realm, and it's really about attention. The idea is, what can you do to make it so that in the next 5 seconds, there's something that is drawing the audience in, that is bringing them closer. Now, musically and thematically, the repetitiveness is good for implanting something in their memory. It's good for establishing stability in the theme. You don't want to make everybody just confused because there's too many changes and changes in modality and all kinds of craziness. It's also appropriate to the genre to have repetition. But I do wonder, getting into maybe more of a sound designy territory, since that's one of your skill sets, it's like, what can you do to make it so that there's sort of risers, some morphing sound effects things? I'm kind of assuming here that you might be a guitar player as well. So how can you use your effects pedals and things to create feedback or swelling, or using reverb to go from, background elements that are really blurred and obscured to something that's clear and in focus? And then when the weapon comes in here, what can you do to make it so that makes someone go and bang their head, like head banging, and just getting really into it? Now, the groove is kind of all there, but I think from a production, from a sort of sound design perspective, I'm wondering if there's something you could have created a little bit more tension with heading into the guitar really kicking in. Can you do something there? I noticed also that the drums this can be for an effect where the drums are a little bit on the sloppy timing side. Now, some of that, it's really gritty, it's really visceral. I think that it might have ticked a few percentages too far for me, where the drums did feel a bit like they were maybe kind of off the grid, and that we weren't actually in a groove together as a band. Now, particularly for music where it's very band oriented, we want to make sure that it feels like these are musicians who have played together forever, toured. They're just so awesome at their individual skills. And when we're producing the music itself, when we're thinking it through, it's helpful to just personify those individuals and be like, okay, this is the bassist, this is the drummer, this is how they play off of each other. The bassist obviously on stage is standing next to the drummer, so they're looking at each other and being like, yeah, do the thing, cool. And, try to think through this actually being real people as opposed to waveforms that you're recording and putting into a DAW, because sometimes we can sterilize our work because we're not thinking about the enjoyment of the music and what a real band would be like if they were actually musicians together. Moving on here to the next clip, we have Racetrack. So we have the drum and bass kind of foundation, and then we have some horns on the top line, primarily with melody. There's no real harmony. Like, there's a little, but there's no real harmony to speak of. I think an opportunity here is to make this a little bit more robust, and to consider musically, like, how can you add harmony to this thing? What are the supporting instruments? Like, so far we're just hearing the drums and bass and the horns, which maybe is fine by itself as an opener, but as the song kind of goes on, I'm kind of waiting for that development again. So it's like, bring in more elements. And if the goal emotionally here is to represent a sport that is high octane, super interesting, very community oriented, the crowd's cheering and everything else, I think that having something that has a little bit of a staccato, bum, 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 it's very major key, which is not necessarily wrong or bad, but it feels a little bit like it feels a little jolly because of the staccato nature, and because it's this solo brass instruments or close to solo, a small ensemble. And I'm wondering if there's a way to make it so that this is a little bit more broad. And I'll put it like this. When I sit down to compose, I'm thinking through what emotion do I want people to feel? What instruments are appropriate to the genre? What kind of rhythm, melody, and harmony? What are the things that would actually best work with that genre? And I'll even jot them down. I'll list it out, and I'll start to think through, okay, is this a small ensemble? Is it big and bombastic? Is it communal or solitary? And that helps inform the production choices, the instrument choices, and can help you kind of go further into it from there. The last one here, and then we'll move on for the sake of other people being able to have a chance to show their work. This was fun. I think that the comment on the last clip about the instrument choice in that, I definitely feel like you nailed it on this one in terms of that sort of 808 sound. There's a sort of quirkiness to the whole thing, having the harp. I think it's a flute in there and everything. The instrument choice is really solid. I think that musically it would be nice to sort of develop it a little bit more and just consider how can you push into that cozy feeling that this genre is really known for. I think that it's there, but as a small example of where I could see some immediate improvement, the drums, they feel a little bit unpredictable and a little bit harsh sounding. So from a mix perspective, I think you could soften the snare sound. I think that there's even ways where, you might consider like a cross stick snare sound. Maybe it's even layered with what you have here that does the pa, 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 like something that just sort of elongates, makes there a bit more predictability in the way that shakers or a hi-hat or something like that can do. to be sure, the emotion is there. I think that the emotion is correct. I think it's just a matter of fleshing out the production. So thank you so much, Leandro, for sharing all of this. Really nicely done here. All right, so we're going to move on here just so that more people can kind of get into the feedback. So this one here, we've got Jarrell. Absolutely, Leandro, my pleasure. Nicely done on that. We've got Jarrell. By the way, if anybody, as we go through, if you have questions, if you have things that kind of crop up, either on the specific feedback I'm offering, the frameworks that I'm kind of going through, or something that's pertinent to yours when it comes up, please feel free to put that in. So Jarrell, we have here two things. We've got Wise implementation reel and Wise implementation gameplay demo. Okay, so something that I'll share off the top here is the idea that people are going to first validate your skill and then ask the question, tell me more. I guess it's not is it a question? I don't know. I'm getting that wrong. But basically they're going to try to assess, does this person have the skill? Because if you don't have the skill they're looking for, or the quantity of skill they're looking for yet, then they should move on, right? That's for all of us. If I don't have the skill, you shouldn't hire me, right? I'm not qualified. So the first thing they'll do is they'll evaluate, do you have the skill? And they're going to try to do that as quickly as possible because they potentially have another 500 links and CVs that they have to go through. After they ask that question or answer that question, do you have the skill? They're going to be trying to answer the question, tell me more, the statement, tell me more. And I think that this is a great combo, showing the gameplay and then also showing the behind the scenes, because it will give you a little bit more information about the person, which is really great. Okay, let's start here with the implementation gameplay demo. All right, I'm going to pause. So first impressions matter a lot. And I want to share a principle that I think can affect a lot, especially for people doing implementation, that can affect the perception of your brand and skill value. Implementation is critically important. What you do is amazingly important to the final project, because you could have amazing sounds and they can get killed in implementation where things are muting, getting stomped on, the mix is not coming through. There's so much that matters about implementation. The perception of your audience, they're not just perceiving your implementation skills. They are simultaneously, even despite their best efforts, they are simultaneously perceiving the sounds themselves. So something that I would encourage you is, if you're, and Jarrell, I haven't deep dived into your portfolio, so I don't know, you may be a sound designer as well as implementation, or implementation is your main focus, but just for the sake of example, if your main thing is implementation, consider either getting better at sound design or pairing with somebody who's really good at sound design so that you're showing your implementation skills and not getting distracted, and things aren't getting distracted by your sound design skills. So as a little mini example of this, I think that the beginning of it was strong. When it comes to these little creatures here, if I'm not thinking implementation, if I falter for just a moment and I'm not thinking about, oh, this is an implementation reel, I might think, nah, I don't know if, was the sound of those, is that what those creatures actually sound like? It kind of sounds like a person in their bedroom making that sound, which it probably is. Like, we're all sort of doing that, and the same with the sound of them, like popping out of this sort of fire cauldron thing. Like right now, I'm hearing fire in my left and right speakers, but the fire is 30 paces ahead of me. And, when they come out of this fire, I'm hearing a synthy whooshy sound as opposed to a flaming, like plus the whooshy sound. So there's like these things that I know that your intent here is that people only evaluate you from your implementation, but I think that the sound design can also sometimes affect how we're going to get graded by people. And I wish it wasn't the case. I really wish. I wish that people who are evaluating us can purely segment everything that they're listening to, and they just say, oh, this is implementation. I'm going to evaluate trigger points and spatialization and the mix, et cetera, but I think that the actual sound effects themselves can affect perception. So let's keep going here. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a couple things that I think that we can all kind of learn from. Something that we sometimes do when we're designing sounds for a demo reel, especially if it's a redesign or something like that, we might not cover all of the elements. We might not cover the ambience, the little like pickup moments. There's a moment here early on where these blue orby things kind of come to the player, and that had no coverage. And on the one side, maybe that doesn't matter at all. But I think that there is an opportunity here where, like, try and cover the full scene. And I'll say I'm guilty of this too. It was a few years back, but I did some design work to get a gig working for Minecraft Legends. And even though I got the gig, I didn't design all of the elements. And I now see that as like I designed what was, specifically the focus of the thing. But I think that there is sometimes a benefit, subtly, but squeezing in some of those extras because it shows attention to detail, it shows thoroughness, and it's another opportunity to showcase your skill. Overall, I'm digging this. From an implementation perspective, it's working well. I think that implementation is also an opportunity to showcase storytelling. Now, when we're thinking about what sound means to a scene like this, it does a couple things. One, sound in a scene like this means that you as a player feel empowered. You feel powerful when you're supposed to feel powerful. You feel weak when you're supposed to feel weak. It glues to the scene and everything feels really cohesive. Another thing that sound does in a scene like this, especially when you're able to roam around an open world like this, sound acts as a notifier as to where the players are supposed to put and draw their attention toward. So I wonder, an opportunity here, if I was, say, audio directing this project and we're thinking about what kind of coverage do we want to have, I'm wondering if when they appear, there's a little bit more of an opportunity for a vocalization to show up at that point, as opposed to when they're just 3 feet away. Because I assume a scene like this eventually leads to overwhelm, where there's just like tons of people coming at you and whatever. But in these early stages, when it's a bit more sparse, knowing, because it's panned appropriately, knowing that the sound is coming from my left or from my right is something that's able to guide your attention, and that can act as an empowerment for wave one, where you feel really good because you're like, oh yeah, I know where they're coming from. I'm going to go and address that issue. I go over here, I know, and I address the issue. It's actually a way to empower you with information as a player so that you feel really powerful in wave one. And then in the later waves, you're just going to be swarmed by characters and you're just going to feel overwhelmed, which is actually a good thing in that case. So yeah, so when they appear, we get this kind of just sort of white, noisy, whooshy sort of sound. But think of it from the creature's perspective, and this is where the storytelling comes in. When you design from the story perspective, you put yourself in the headspace of the characters on screen. So presumably, if I'm a creature coming from some dark realm, going through a portal to attack my enemy, they clearly are motivated here in this scene to come at the person and attack them. So they already know what they're doing. So you better believe when I walk through that portal as the bad guy, I'm going to be like doing my battle cry already, right? You know, coming out, and then now I'm ready to attack you. And as I get closer to you, I have another exertion, which you do have that here. So something for you to look at and consider is that implementation is an aspect of storytelling. And what is the coverage that will notify the player, draw out the emotion of the moment, or bring reality and alignment and immersion to the characters that are actually in the scene because they're coming through this portal and they're totally engaged. Nicely done on this, though. I think this is really fun. I'm going to just skip ahead a little bit. Now, something here I noticed in a couple of the scenes is there's actually a sort of time delay in the sound effects themselves. And this, you know, the onus is kind of on the person who designs the sound, but it is also for someone who's implementing. When I get that big electric slamming sound, there's what seems like almost a 1 second delay before. So I'm feeling a disconnect. Like I'm kind of feeling the technology behind the thing rather than feeling like this is actually a real space. And when energy comes down from the sky, it rips those, you know, particles in two. So something to consider, especially when you're showing your demo for implementation, is like, is the timing of everything in sync? Is that working? Here, I'm just going to do a little catch up and see what we got going on in the chat. The person hiring would also think about the sound design taste a person has and how did they actually think and plan to make the video perfect, even when sound design doesn't matter. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then we've got, it would be a nice system built around creature idle vocalizations, creatures attacking, creature defense. Yeah, cool idea. Cool idea. Okay, I do want to briefly look here at what we have with the actual implementation reel. So this is where we have an opportunity that somebody has said, they've seen your initial demo and they said, tell me more. So let's check it out.
I'm Jarlayer and welcome to my Wise Unreal demo. In this video, we'll explore methods I used for designing and implementing sounds for the Unreal Engine Action RPG demo. So let's begin with the source material I used. I started by recording some objects around the house that I thought would be quite useful for the player's movement, such as a backpack, a belt, or different metal objects.
By the way, I just want to pause for a second and praise you for this. Feeling really great. Because since this is a tell me more piece, that means I'm going to give you more of my time to evaluate what's going on, to understand your personality. I'm looking for an evaluating team fit. Is this somebody who's good to work with? Are they humble? Like, are they knowledgeable and skilled? And so far, really enjoying it. And I love like getting B-roll clips like this. This is amazing. It just shows thoughtfulness. And I also think that the sounds that you captured here were very appropriate for the gack that was going on screen. You know, in addition to that, just a little note that this might be for some folks joining us. Don't be afraid to augment your homemade stuff with existing libraries and synthesis and everything else, which I suspect is the case later on. But it's just something that I've noticed with a number of people who are maybe earlier, like maybe they're students, they're trying to get into the industry. Sometimes there seems to be this obsession with, I need to record everything from scratch from things around my house, which that by itself is a very good skill to have, and you should get that skill. But I think sometimes we are prioritizing the handcraftedness over what creates the best sound for the final product. That's not true of what we see here, but just as a comment for anybody who maybe they've been, they've done that and they're just like, I only ever record things around my house. It's like, that's a good skill, but if the goal is to get to an amazing job sooner, you need to have that skill, synthesis, and using existing libraries and being really good at that is also a valuable skill.
Objects, or some metallic resonant tones for the swords rings. different squeals and screeches that became the spider's vocalization.
Yeah, I love all of this. And by the way, I got one of those Parrot microphones too recently and started using it. It's really good. No, it's not about the gear, but that's cool. And I like that mic. Very cool.
And some material for things like pickups or healing potions. I then designed every sound in Reaper, making multiple variations to keep things from feeling repetitive. The next thing I tackled.
All right, let's talk about, by the way, this has been great. I think as far as getting to know you, Jarrell, really, really nicely done. You're representing yourself, I think, in a really, really great way. Let's use this moment to talk about variations, okay? Variations are kind of like a neglected art. And the reason for that, my theory at least, is that we kind of emotionally fatigue after we've done the initial design, because the initial design, and when that's approved or when we think it's good enough, it kind of gives us a little bit of a dopamine release. And after that, we sort of feel like our completion has occurred. And so something just to encourage everyone, including myself, is that try to reserve that dopamine release, that feeling of successfulness and completion till after you've actually completed 8 or 10, however many you need to do, banks. Because I think sometimes we don't actually think through the design work of the banks as much as we do the initial asset, and we actually accidentally sabotage ourselves for that reason. But let's take a listen to these variations here, and then we can chat a little bit more. Right here.
Sound in Reaper, making multiple variations to keep things from feeling repetitive. The next thing
something that I noticed in those layers, I think you did a really great job of using different vocalizations. That's an immediate win, to make it so that there's variety. I think that some of your mid frequencies to low frequencies felt like they were a little bit samey for me. And that's where they were a little bit white noisy. You have to be careful about that because that obscures clarity. And especially in a battle oriented game, that's a bad thing. But I think they felt a little bit samey. Here's the principle. How do we test to find out if our variations have enough variety across the board? On the one side, we're going to look at it and we're just going to say, that's a different vocalization. It's rhythmically different. It's pitch different. There's a lot of variation to it. Great. Check. Moving on to the next part. With your other layers there, something I would encourage you to do, it sounds weird, but it's super effective, is take your bank after you've exported it, drop it into the DAW again, and then filter with a pretty strong EQ, filter out your low, mids, and highs. I'll show you kind of how this sort of looks. You're going to have kind of 3 variations of it. You could do more than that if you want to, but you're going to have your lows, your mids, and your highs. And you're just going to filter all of these assets. Let's just say, for the sake of example, there was 10 of them. You're going to filter all of these assets through that. And then what you do is you need to take a listen to each of them and say, are these distinguishable from each other? And often what you'll find, especially it's kind of in the lows and mids or low mids, you'll find that that's where you found a sound that was really impactful for an explosive sound or whatever it is. And you just kind of reused it and you pitched it by 2 semitones and that was kind of it. And I think that sometimes that's a missed opportunity where you can go deeper into your sound design. And this just reveals that, right? This is a mechanism for you to see, oh, that's kind of repetitive. These all sound samey in my low and low mids. Well, what if there was more variety across the frequency spectrum and not just in the vocalization or otherwise? But anyways, we won't watch through the full 7 minutes here, but Jarrell, nicely done on this. I think especially this reel as a tell me more piece feels really good, really satisfying, gives me a sense of who you are, and you should be really proud of it. So well done. All right, so we are now going to move on. Actually, sorry, I should catch up a bit on the chat here. I probably feel tired doing those variations. Yeah, that's the thing. We do feel tired with the variations. Okay, cool. Wonderful job. All right. So this one is really fun. So Chris sent this to me. I think it was yesterday, and he had actually sent me the technical breakdown first, and I replied. I was like, hey, would it be okay if we actually reviewed your website as well? And it's because of the principle that we've already been talking about at this point, that you have content that is to answer the question, do I have the skill? And then you have content that answers the question, tell me more, or the prompt, tell me more. And originally he had sent kind of the technical audio breakdown, and that is more of a tell me more piece. And you can also tell by the runtime, just like with the previous piece here from Jarrell, the tell me more piece is allowed to linger. It's allowed to spend more time. And one of the questions that I received this week was, how long should a demo reel be? It is, since it's just to answer the question, do you have the skill? Generally speaking, it's within a minute to a minute and a half is kind of what I'm expecting for that. Anything longer than that, I get it. You're super skilled in so many different things and you want to represent all that. I feel all those feelings too, especially as a generalist, but we can't stop there. We actually have to just say, this person doesn't have a lot of time. I need to respect that more than anything else. And I'm just going to show my skill in it as potent a way as possible. That'll kick your butt. It kicks my butt all the time to make it as potent as possible. And then you can have tell me more content. And we'll go into that for a second here. But let's take a look at the website in general. Something that I would say, Chris, I really love about this is just front and center. I know what to click on. I have my first actionable step. Some folks, and I would say my website is a little bit like this, but they'll have huge banners at the top and just like clicking on the demo reel. That's why I'm here. So starting there is a good thing. One piece here, I noticed this. I think you might have a QA background as well. Is that you have this, I noticed this because of my QA eye. I noticed that you have this thing to cycle through different stuff. I suspect most people are not going to see that. And it didn't auto cycle or anything like that. What I would recommend is that you have kind of like a hero video, like the one that you definitely want them to click on. It is the number one thing that they should click on. For these supporting elements here, pick the one that is the best, put it at the top, put the other supporting elements a little further down. I would just encourage you to surface those, because I think there's a very good chance that if somebody comes here, they're just going to see technical sound designer, see the technical audio breakdown, see that it's maybe too long for them, and they might bounce then. Hopefully not, but there's a chance that they would. I would say as far as images are concerned here, let's talk about that for a second. I've been receiving a lot of invite requests from sound designers and so on LinkedIn. And there was one individual who reached out. They seemed really nice. And they said, would you take some time to kind of evaluate my LinkedIn? And I was like, sure. You know, I said, you should evaluate mine too. Like, let's help each other. They did not have a headshot on LinkedIn. They instead had kind of their company logo and so on. Now, I think that headshots are vitally important from two perspectives. One, it's part of your branding, especially if you're on LinkedIn or other socials where the favicon, like it shows up and this is tied to who you are. Two, it's the first step to move someone towards knowing, liking, and trusting you. And you have to think through, how does my body language, my background, the quality of the image, what does it say about me? Does it say that I'm professional? Does it say that I'm friendly? Does it say that I'm accessible? Now, we all have reasons, like this individual who didn't have their face on LinkedIn. We have reasons why we might be insecure, shy, just not confident, and we might not show ourselves too much online. That's really difficult. I know it is. Like I know if say I was struggling with some dental issues, I have friends that they've said, I just don't like smiling. But something that we need to think through is, how do our images, our headshots and so on, what do they communicate about us? So Chris, something that I would encourage with you, I would say consider smiling, and if you're not feeling super confident for whatever reason, fake it. You just have to fake it for enough moments in order to get that headshot, because I think that, based on what I heard in your voice, you're a passionate guy who really enjoys what he does. You're super stinking smart, way smarter than me. And smile, it's a part of using your body to welcome other people. And the last little note on this too, you'll notice I'm doing this even during the live stream. Your voice is a mechanism to communicate what you care about. And you are not stuck with whatever voice you've just become accustomed to for the last 5, 10 years, your whole lifetime, whatever. Using your voice and enjoying and savoring it and focusing on the details and increasing the tempo of what you're saying and then pausing for effect. These are all things that all of us have access to. And this comes from someone who I did not used to speak this way when I was broadcasting publicly. These are things that you can do. Use your face, use your voice, gain the confidence as necessary, and start getting yourself out there. Anyways, lovely. It's a good headshot. It's solid, Chris. I think that it would be nice if you were smiling a little bit more. Small detail, but something that's worth considering as you show yourself online. Around the rest of the website. This is great because this, obviously, if I stumbled across this page, I'm getting a lot of variety of things. Let's just make sure that the best of the best is at the top, which is probably the case, and go from there. Having the resume there is super convenient. Really good to have that. Not essential, by the way, not essential, but it is for certain, talent scouts or whatever. That's really important for them. Let's see. In terms of the technical audio breakdown, I'm just gonna praise this thing. We do not have enough time to go through it at length, but Chris, I watched a bit of it yesterday. We'll watch a little bit of it here. It's awesome. What you've achieved here is so super cool. And I think you should even consider, if you haven't already, are there ways to clip pieces from this, do little shorts that you post on YouTube or Instagram or on your LinkedIn if you're, this is so cool. Now it's just a matter of packaging and how do you tell the story? And can you tell it in 30 seconds instead of 6 minutes? The 6 minute is great. I love that. And for a technical deep dive for the, if you're getting hired for this role, this is so important and it's amazing that you have this piece. See if you can reuse some of this content on socials and push it even further. Let's watch for a little bit here.
Chris Ron, a game sound designer, and this is my audio breakdown for FPV Labs drone simulator using Unreal Engine and Rise. I was responsible for the total audio design and implementation on this project, which broadly fit into 3 categories: the drone, the space, and the sweeteners. The goal was to create audio that's reminiscent of real drone action cam footage.
Okay, I just want to pause and just praise a couple things here. Great introduction of yourself, tone, the music, everything is working super, super great for me. I also love that you broke it down.
Fit into 3 categories: the drone, the space, and the sweeteners.
Those 3 categories, having a process behind what you're doing, I think is really, really great. This is a minor thing, but you could have put those maybe on a single page, especially if you're doing a cut down for shorts and stuff, having all 3 on one page so people can take it in for a little bit of a lingering moment. Same runtime, but just for a lingering moment would maybe be a benefit. But super cool. It shows your process. You've clearly thought this through in a really great way.
Clear, with meaningful sonic interaction and player adjustability for a variety of drone configurations and player preferences. An FPV drone, or quad, has 4 propellers and a PID loop that helps the drone maintain its orientation in space. The best result came from recording recreations of isolated characteristics from real drones and from other objects like a clarinet mouthpiece, vacuum cleaner, and various fans. Some samples are duplicated and pitched up in steps following the harmonic series.
This is just so super cool. Again, you have to clip this down. It's just having an opening hook, how to make a drone sound like this. It's so, you nailed it. It's really, really cool. Hey, Game Audio Learning. I don't know if that's Greg Lester over there or someone else from the Game Audio Learning, but welcome here. Obviously, if you all, I'm going to do a shout out. If you all need to learn something and improve your skill, which we all do, Game Audio Learning is an amazing resource. Definitely check it out. And of course, Air Wiggles, if you're not on there yet, and AirCon that's happening, I think next week or the next one, I think around the 21st. Yes, check it out. It's me, Greg. Hey, Greg. Greg and I hang out every once in a while. He's one of the best. And yeah. Okay. Anyways, I'm not going to watch through the rest of this video. I would encourage you, just especially if you're a technical sound designer, you're trying to learn and grow. What an amazing and unique problem to solve that Chris had to go through here. And Chris, just nicely done on that. You represented yourself well. Super, super cool. Let's see. I do want to look briefly here because we do have, that was the Tell Me More content. It was featured heavily on the front. I'm curious if any of these other ones are actually like a, you know, maybe a better hero thing. Well, I mean, it depends on your goals, because obviously sound design is something that's, you know, maybe your goal is on the technical side more so than the sound designing itself, but all right, sorry. Okay, try that again. Super cool. Super, super cool. I think that this is a theme that I'm getting in these reviews. I'm seeing a lot of amazingly talented and skilled designers who have the technical chops. They're often hitting the material choices. They're often hitting the key story beats and everything else like that. I think that the piece that could bring it to that next level is how can we add contrast and nuance and tension and release to the stories that we're telling. And I think that there were hints of that in this where I did get that. So I know that it's totally within your skill set, Chris. I think that similar to the dopamine comments I had earlier about how when we, have to do a bunch of repeated sounds for a sound bank, we can kind of just fatigue and kind of not go the last 10, 15% to make something awesome. I think that the very best sound designers are very much like the best athletes, that where they test their mettle is in the last 10, 15% when they don't have any energy left. And I think that that's where things go from, oh, that was awesome, to, whoa, that was amazing, like just mind-blowingly good. I think what you have here is really solid, a great representation of your skill set. But let's talk a little bit about storytelling and about tension and release. Something that I saw in this piece, which was kind of interesting, is there was sort of a mini story of this lantern, right? We have this moment with the lantern, presumably it's this powerful object. He tries to blast his enemy with it, and the enemy is like, that didn't work. You thought you were so powerful, and then takes him out. And then later on, and I was hoping you were going to go here with the story, and then it just didn't happen. We had that humming drone kind of a sound. And I thought it was going to be associated with the lantern here. But it wasn't, it seems that, this idea of the lantern snuffing out, that, I'm speaking in metaphor, and I don't know this game myself, but that's his heart, right? That is the life essence in him. Now, of course, I'm speaking in metaphor. Maybe there was a different use of it in the actual game, but I think to myself, if that represents his life force, quote unquote, then it was something that he had within the story, attempted to use within the story, and that ultimately kind of led to his downfall in the story. I think that there was another key moment here where we highlight this object. Now, in this moment, as a sound designer, you've just spent the last few scenes focusing on the creature, the big baddie. And I think you did a great job in terms of tension and release. You did a great job of, we don't see the sort of dragon creature off screen, but we hear the anticipation. He looks up. We're following the motivation of the scene. So you really nailed that. But then we have this thing, dragon flies down. Big scream, comes on down. We're supposed to find out how terrifying. And then we've got the lantern, right? The lantern that presumably, because we actually see the rest of the scene, presumably he has that lantern on and he's like itchy trigger finger. He's like ready, like, when am I going to grab the lantern? This is going to be my secret sauce, which ultimately leads to his downfall. It's like thinking through those little details of like, how can I bring that humming lanterny sound that, was kind of at the end? Can we associate it with the object? Can we tie it into when he blasts him? And can we tie it into this moment of failure and the snuffing out of his life force? Another little moment here I saw where I felt like the storytelling could be engaged a little bit more. There was actually a pause in the animation when the dragon comes down. We do that little push in. Something that I'd encourage everybody to do, learn about cinematography, learn about animation, learn about, there are these diagrams around animation, like animation, stretch, pull, timing. Let's see if we can pull this up quickly. There's these little, this is some of it. Like learn about things like squash and stretch. Learn about editing techniques, J-cuts and things like that. The reason why this is important is because we will start to understand the storytelling mechanisms that other departments are making. And I highly encourage you to talk to them about it too. What is this character to you? What do these objects represent? Where do they come from? I noticed there's this kind of push in here. Can you tell me, you're obviously highlighting some significant moment there. There's all of these things that we can derive from the other disciplines that it can help inform our design work. And I think that there was just a missed opportunity here in the redesign where clearly the visual design said, I'm going to punch in for effect or push in for effect and then lead into this climactic moment. So that making this slowdown moment here as impactful as possible was reliant on the pitch. If we're thinking about baseball, the pitch was the push in. Like there's anticipation in that moment. You can imagine, even though it doesn't show his eyes here, you can imagine him going like, oh crap, and then, going into this slowdown moment. So I think that it's where there's an opportunity for us to think through the story, think through the characters and what matters to them and what motivates them. Think about the other disciplines and why they did a push in and like all of these other nuances. There's an opportunity for us to love those things and cherish those things and then use those to motivate us as we do our design work. And what's actually really relieving about that is, even though it's a bit of work to gain that creative muscle up front, once you've gained it, there are way less moments of writer's block. There's way less moments of, I don't know, how should I cover this scene? And like, what should I look for in my library? Or what sound should I go and record? Or, how am I going to, all of those like technical details get answered under the decision matrix of what is the story we are trying to tell. And as you have those questions up front, you're able to go so much deeper and it's so much more fun too. Anyways, nicely done on this clip, Chris. Like, obviously you're very skilled at your craft. I was getting into the last details of like, what does the last 10, 15% look like? What does it look like to kind of level up? You've clearly got the chops for it. It's just like honing that in and focusing that. So well done. So let's see here. I'm just going to take a look at the chat. Cinematic impacts, drones, absolutely. Should have more weight in the end. The stabbing sound maybe sound a little like betrayal. Yeah, I love that. Some really cool thoughts here in the chat. Let's see. Moving on, we've got game audio reel here. Let's look through this together. I'm going to pause again. 4 seconds. Just remember that. I'm going to rail on this for everybody. It's the same as true for me. We only have somewhere between 3 to 10 seconds to answer the question, do they have the skill? And if we spend the first 3 seconds in silence with a title card, with something that's not answering that question vividly, then we're missing out. So I'll keep saying that. It's just a friendly reminder there. All right, we're going to pause there for a quick second. I actually saw a bit of this demo before we started streaming here, and the next clip is really solid. It's got some great stuff in it, but I want to focus on that first clip for now before we kind of move on. So in this first clip, we're dealing with, two clearly powerful beings fighting in the sky. There's a lot of electricity going on. There's, obviously you're up there in the middle of nowhere. There's like all the wind and everything. How can we apply the principles of storytelling thinking to how we approach a design for this scene? And by the way, a lot of this you can do way before you trigger a single sound, way before you maybe even open the DAW or grab your microphone or whatever it is. You can think through a lot of these things just on a piece of paper. And I highly encourage you to do that, because paper prototyping, or just thinking it through in that way, can save you massive amounts of time on the back end for lack of clarity, lack of direction, feeling like you've hit writer's block, like whatever it is. It can have a huge effect. So I'll talk through my process on this scene, and then we can take a listen to it again and talk about, well, what are the things that we could potentially improve? So as I'm looking at the scene and we're considering, like, who are these characters? What do they do? What are their powers? What is motivating them? I mean, clearly they're ticked with each other, right? They're pretty upset with each other for one reason or another. And frankly, you can make up whatever reason you want. Sometimes you don't actually need to know the full motivation behind the scene. I highly encourage you to know the motivation and to talk to the writers and everybody else. But if you don't have access to that information for whatever reason, you're kind of designing blind, then you've got to come up with the motivation yourself. Think about the I don't know, this could be the worst betrayal that you've ever felt personally in your life. Think about that. How does that make you feel? If you had superhuman powers, how would that, clearly these characters are in some form of rage, like they're really going at it. This isn't just like a respected duel between two adversaries who have known each other for decades. There's a bit of a sense of visceral burning hatred and anger. So what does that mean for the design? That's something to consider, the emotional weight behind what's motivating the scene. So I think some of the considerations here, obviously there's a lot of electricity between these two characters. I don't know for sure if this is lightning specifically or not, but because we're in a sky setting, I'm just going to make that assumption. Because we have two characters that both appear, maybe, are they both electric? It kind of looks like it. I might be misreading the scene, but that's something that you can make really clear in your sound design, right? If these are two characters and they're both electric, we've got a couple problems that immediately presents us with. One, that means that how are you going to distinguish the two characters? And I highly encourage you to use this principle of, when you do your design work, close your eyes, shut off the computer screens, whatever you have to do, and listen to the scene as if you were a newcomer. Listen to the scene as if you'd never heard it before, as if you hadn't spent hundreds of hours on it or whatever. Listen to the scene and say to yourself, can I understand what's going on with my eyes closed? Now, the reason why that's important for a scene like this, assuming that both of these characters are electric, how can you distinguish the form of electricity of one versus another? Great opportunity to talk to the team. Great opportunity to think of a reason for yourself if that reason doesn't otherwise exist. And then to consider for yourself, how do I make electricity sound different between two characters? What can I do to affect it, have different sound source to begin with, synthesize, whatever you're going to do. The second challenge that this automatically creates is that electricity, waterfalls, wind, a lot of these elements are automatically very white noisy. So a couple ways to address that. One, like using plugins, like I think it's WNS from Waves. There's a lot of other, noise removing plugins that you can get. There's probably some free out there, so check that out. See if you can just remove noise from the source, obviously using an EQ, get rid of low rumble if you're not needing it, or like get rid of frequencies that don't matter to make it more potent. And then consider what are the rhythms of these sounds, and can you add extra rhythms either through editing or automated plugins or something along those lines to make it so that the sort of silhouette of the waveform is more interesting and less white noisy or constant. Now, the good news is for this clip, we don't have that problem of it being especially like droning, white noisy, kind of getting in the way of itself, that sort of a thing. What are some of the things, like getting more practical, what are some of the things we can do to improve this clip? Something that I observe on occasion with punches and kicks and stuff like that is that we don't actually think through which one was the most important. And this is an important storytelling mechanism. Which of these kicks was the most important? Which of these punches was the most important? And again, this is like not even in the DAW. You can consider this and say, okay, if we have a sequence of, oops, sorry, making a mess already. If we have a sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punches, as an example, what should distinguish these from each other? Now, if you're not in some kind of martial art or you're not really familiar with punching, maybe you research it a little bit. Maybe you actually take a moment. I know you'll look silly, but like, at least I would punch a little bit in your studio. Like, just consider, what does this actually look like when the mechanics of punching are happening? Something that we could probably very easily think about is that the first punch is really important for the audience to hear it very clearly and to know a punching sequence has started. The subsequent 3 are kind of like the less important in a way, unless there's some kind of narrative difference that kind of occurs. So in terms of volume and impact, this is actually an opportunity to lower the floor. So like, let's raise the ceiling here. Let's lower the floor here. And then let's riser, tension, release into that like big climactic, if it's, the final impact or whatever here. And you can see how we go from a scene where we're hearing, there might be tonal variety, there might be rhythmic variety, but we're not infusing meaning into each of those punches yet. The meaning of the first one, he had the most wind up. Or the first one had to be super quick because he had to catch his enemy by surprise. The subsequent ones, he was tiring a little bit, but then he mustered a bit of extra energy at the end for the final climactic punch. Those are the sorts of things that you can think through to make it so that you're actually able to add more storytelling to something that feels as generic, dismissible, passive as just like, oh, I need punches. Oh, I need footsteps. Oh, I need, like, these things that are really repeated, they're gonna start to feel a bit fatiguing because you don't have any story behind them, and you don't have any movement behind them, and you don't have any tension and release behind them. So something to consider there. Okay, let's jump over to the subsequent clip here. We've got the I think that clip is solid. I mean, it felt like it kind of covered the basic elements. Is there something that you could do to kind of make it stronger? It seems like this is a little bit more of an implementation thing, potentially doing a little talking head piece and explaining what you created, potentially showing a few of the parameters on screen from WIs to tell the story of like what you're actually doing. I can make my assumptions, if I'm evaluating this piece, but remember, I'm trying to evaluate your skill. Do you have the skill? So if within that clip, there are ways for you to augment what you have and make it so that it's a little bit clearer what is happening or not happening, that can be a benefit to you. Sometimes that's just in the form of text, right? It's saying like sound design and final mix and master by me, or like whatever it is, just to articulate with a little bit more detail so that when someone is within an individual clip, they can say, tell me more about that individual clip. Oh, good. That explains what you actually did. I would say that when I've been trying to hire people for projects, I do have moments where I look at a reel and I'm like, which part did you do? Like, I know you might be trying to show the very best of your skill set and in a way, maybe accidentally perhaps take credit for the whole, but like, I need to understand which part did you actually do and were responsible for so that I can attribute value to you specifically, to your credited account. Let's go on to the next clip here. I would say sitting there just in terms of runtime, we kind of went from 40 seconds to 48 seconds. So that was like a 10-second pause. And we all would like to think that our audience is super patient, is totally going to hang around. But we have to think of the very worst version of them or ourselves as being super fickle and flaky and disappearing. Not because they're horrible people, but just because they've got 500, 1,000 of these things they have to review. If you can trim the 10 seconds there, pop some things from Wise up on screen so that I know what's happening and why it matters, I think there's a chance that you can keep their attention for longer and showcase your skills. Because that's the goal here. You want to showcase your skills and really articulate what you're exceedingly good at. And if that's not clear on a glance, or if there's a lingering pause for too long, there's a chance that your audience is just going to bounce and they're not going to learn how awesome you are. Okay. Okay, going back to those previous clips, I think it's important for us to be clear on what is the purpose behind the clip and what do we want them to come away with. This is a concept from learning and development, adult development in particular, but also applicable to kids. There's a thing that they do where they consider what are the learning objectives that we want a student to go away with. In marketing, we would say, like, what is it that we want them to feel, to know, and to do, you know? And so for those clips, I saw in the bottom, because I'm being especially perceptive right now. Like, I'm really trying to I'm probably being more perceptive than somebody might be when they're quickly glancing at 500 of these. I noticed that one of them was for WIs, the other was from Fmod. And if the story you're trying to communicate is, I know implementation in both of these and I'm pretty good at it, then I think that there might be ways to trim that down and articulate that a little bit differently. Some ideas here. Now, this is just me spitballing, but like maybe you're able to showcase like just a brief interstitial where it shows like the clips running and it shows both Ys and Fmod, and it's like skilled in both of these, and then it goes to the individual clips. So something kind of like to establish the scene. I'll put it this way, like, you know, in sitcoms or even in movies, there's what they call the establishing shot. It's where, you know, if you ever watched Friends, it's like they show outside of the cafe and like now they're inside the cafe. There's this establishing shot that you're trying to give to guide your audience's perception and to guide where they're going to focus next. So for that section, you might consider just saying like, skills in this and that, keep it really brief, like 2 to 5 seconds on screen, showing clips of both, and then showing in more detailed clips afterward. Then we have here Hogwarts Legacy. All right, let's talk about mono and stereo for a second. One of our responsibilities as sound designers is to glue to the scene. Now, gluing to the scene means a lot of different things. It means the right material choice. It means the right mix, the right reverb. It means the reality of the scene, as well as the hyper reality of the scene. Because sometimes it's arcadey, or we're really trying to, hyper augment what reality actually is, what immersion actually is. Something that I see as a common mistake, and goodness knows I've done this myself, is that when we're designing sounds, we design them in a way that is pleasurable for us at the moment, but does not consider the reality of the scene. And often the case of that is we use stereo sounds for things that are not stereo. So we'll look at the wands themselves. And I did some work with Harry Potter in the past, and so I've thought a lot about wands. So we've got this moment here. So there's the wind up. An important part of tension and release. This is the tension piece. But I'm hearing very wide. Now, obviously, I'm in headphones, so it's extra wide. But I'm hearing very wide stereo field here on the wind up. Now, when we look at the practicality of this world, if we treat the wand as if it's actually a real object in a real place with real rules about how it works or doesn't work, the magic emanates from the wand. It doesn't emanate from the hallway to my left or to my right. So for that reason, something to consider that makes it both more glued to the screen, more immersive, is how can we draw in the player's focus toward the wand and then distribute it into the wider space. Additionally, because the wind up is a little bit quieter than the actual impact at the end, if you think of a character punching, it's like, the punch is the powerful part that should really kick into gear. The wind up is smaller, and it's going to activate less of the room. It can still be vivid and present, but it's going to activate less of the room reverb. It's going to activate less of the sense of space. And then, you're going to hit that person who's presumably 40, 50 feet away, and you're going to hear the cacophonous, reaction of the space, almost as if the room was saying, whoa, well, that was pretty crazy. And you kind of hear that within how grand this space is. So by lowering the floor, by having the wand sounds more narrow, less activating the room reverb, having it a little bit more focused and present, a slightly lesser volume, now there's an opportunity for your impact moment to be more potent, more powerful, more interesting. And I think that you did a decent job of tension and release on that first impact. The second one didn't really create any space for tension and release. Where, imagine if you had a whip, and the whip had a can or some kind of weighted thing, a tennis ball, whatever, on the end of it. If you whip that up into the sky, there's going to be a moment where the ball is kind of lagging behind. And then when you pull it down, there's going to be a thwacking, there's going to be this kind of like, like you're going to get like whipping is actually there's a sonic boom. That's what makes that cracking sound as crazy as it is. And if you look at, there's like scientific videos and things on this subject, they can actually show you the sonic boom that comes at the end of the whip. So with him having this kind of, this animation moment here, he's ultimately like calling down lightning from the sky. You think of just like the tension and the release, the up and then the down, creating space and gap. There's some opportunities there to just make it so that it's more impactful. But I would say, even though I've dwelt on this stuff, just nicely done. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. Moving on here, we have Alejandro, and we've got some music composition. So let's start here with the teaser at the top. And again, just want to praise this because it's something that we should all learn from. Having your thing immediately accessible at the top. This is why I'm here. I want you to prove your skills. This is the quickest way to get me there, which is a great respecting of my time. So let's take a look at this.
Porque somos la luz que se impone a la noche eterna. Porque somos la perdición de los depredadores nocturnos. Porque somos quienes acabarán con la maldición del pacto de sangre. ¿Quiénes somos? Somos los guerreros de Perú. Somos el escudo de la humanidad y no podemos rendirnos, porque esta es nuestra última cruzada.
Lovely.
Durante eones.
Okay, I'm going to pause there for a second. Okay, a couple initial things here. One of the pieces that struck me most when I came to this site was I didn't for sure know if you were a music composer, a sound designer, if you did some other things. Now, obviously, if I look a little closer, I'm just seeing music here and so on. But I would consider putting music composer somewhere near your name. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because even early on this clip, teaser music for Last Crusades, yeah, I would be tempted to say, and this is probably just opinion here, so take it with a grain of salt, but I would be tempted to say The Last Crusades video game teaser, music by your name. Because the reason is just where my eyes are kind of darting around, and plus this is kind of getting cut up a bit by the UI here. I just feel I didn't actually read teaser music for The Last Crusade. I just saw by Alejandro, and I was like, is the teaser, see, like my eyes went to teaser by Alejandro. Like it was like, are you taking credit for all of it, just the audio, or did you edit it? Now this might be, I'm just misunderstanding it. And I'm just being a really like kind of dumb audience member. But there were a couple things between not seeing Alejandro, music composer, and then that where I was just like a little bit unsure. And even though it's like, I think I'm smart enough to figure it out. I knew that I'm just like, oh yeah, you're the music composer. Cool. I see the music clips down here. Even though it was a small misunderstanding, I think it's worth just trying to get out of our audience's way, recognizing that these little tiny trip ups have sometimes a significant impact on just their overall experience, and they won't even know it. It's just a psychological ism, and they won't even know it. So a couple little tweaks, put music composer somewhere in there, just make it clear that that's like what you do and what you're on about. And if you do other things, make that clear, because it's not at this time. The music itself, let's take a little bit of a closer listen there.
¿Quiénes somos? Somos los guerreros de Perú. Somos el escudo de la humanidad y no podemos rendirnos, porque esta es nuestra última cruzada.
I think that this goes back to a comment that I had a little bit earlier about getting close to the marketing department. I think we don't know, just seeing it here, how much control you had over the final audio for this thing. The ending of the clip, it's very sound effect heavy with the fire that's there. There's not a lot of sound design in the rest of the clip, which I think is kind of a missed opportunity for some of the storytelling. But we kind of obscure the last flourishes of the music because there's just this fire sound and everything going on. Because I don't speak, I'm assuming this is Spanish. That's how bad I am at different languages. Apologies for that. I don't know if your music was perfectly hitting all the story beats of the narrative or not. Overall, the music sounded like it was really solid. But I do feel like the final packaging of everything was kind of obscuring how emotionally engaging this could have been, with the climactic finish, the sound effects getting kind of ducked or just EQ'd properly or something. And when I'm left with that kind of final note, most of your audience for a teaser won't actually watch to the end. But for those that do, I kind of just get that humming, buzzing kind of instrument at the end. And it felt like the ending was not as pristine as it could have been. So something to consider there. But that also is very dependent on whether or not you had control over the final, audio for this thing. Did you do the full audio pass with the dialogue and everything concerned or not? So that might have been outside of your control, but it really solid, really, really good.
Durante eones, 4 imperios convivieron en armonía hasta que descubrieron Atena, un mineral de poder absoluto. La ambición desató una guerra interminable.
All right, just pausing for a second. The The vibe of this music is great. I love it. I wish that I could understand, the language and know exactly what's going on, but just the language of the visuals and the music, super fun. Totally hits an emotion. It's got enough of a differentness to it that it kind of stands out in a really pleasing way. Very nicely done. Feels great.
Pactaron un combate final para coronar a un único líder.
I'm just like obsessed with this. The sort of warbly, derpy sound that's kind of going on in the background is really charming, and it just so perfectly fits the scene. So nicely done.
Uno de ellos, lleno de codicia, detonó una bomba cuántica que accidentalmente abrió un agujero negro. Ahora la lucha no es solo por Atena, es por sobrevivir.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. That feels really great. And I liked that I could hear the theming to the very end.
Es por sobrevivir.
The fade out, I don't know if that happened for you afterward. Like if that was something you did or not, but I do feel like the fade out is an interesting choice on the very end of that. So something that happens commonly with advertisements, and I experienced this recently with the Superman experience that we did for Warner Brothers. You've got a 30-second spot, and there's a quick and an immediate fade out. Fade outs are really tough because often they end up cutting off the music. They often do a lot of different things to it. But more often than not, that's because you just don't have the runtime to fully finish the musical idea in the most satisfying way you want to. Now, there's ways to compensate for this. There's things that you can do. But I think in this case, what I would have loved just from a mix perspective is don't do the fade out, and also like increase the volume by 2 to 4 dB of the music after the dialogue has stopped. Like this is the finish for the thing. And it also is like really cool theming that you've got here.
Ahora la lucha no es solo por Atena, es por sobrevivir.
Yeah, the melody is really, really cool and rich. It just seemed a shame that it faded out and that it was sort of a standard volume level for the whole piece, it feels like, as opposed to kind of coming in and out around the vocals so that it felt really glued and immersive for the whole thing. The only critique that I have, because I really enjoyed that,
Hasta que descubrieron Atena, un mineral de poder absoluto.
I'm wondering, and maybe it's in there, but I'm just wondering if there's a way you could have hinted at that melody, the da 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 da, whatever it was. If you could have hinted at that melody somewhere earlier on, maybe you did, and I just didn't fully perceive it. But something that we kind of want to do is we're laying breadcrumbs. Like, have you ever, when watching some kind of comedy special or something like that, you hear a joke early in the set that everybody laughs, they have a good time, they enjoy it. And then later on, they reprise that joke and recontextualize it in a new context. And then everybody goes crazy because they're like, like that was clever and that was so funny and it's continuing the joke. Now we feel like we're on the in crowd and like we're all in this experience together. When, especially for trailers and things like that, something that I like to do is if we can seed some of the melodic content for the payoff moment earlier in the piece, even if it's subtle, even if it's panned, even if it's distant, even whatever it is, if we can do that like 15%, 20% more than what I was experiencing there, often it makes it so that your ending is really potent. And I just really loved the melodic ending to the thing. So it was like, you've got gold here, like show it off, use it a little bit more and make that ending a little bit more impactful. But well done on that piece. Felt really satisfying. So let's see. I see here from Alejandro. Would you consider the SoundCloud reel at the bottom? I want to hear more question that we talked about earlier. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like your formatting for the website is perfect. That these are kind of like your hero moments, like the things that you want to show off the most. I would presume that these hero moments show off the styles of music you prefer to do, the top line quality or the best projects you've worked on, things that just sort of up your brand and reputation and are really great splash and just showcase your skill really well. You put that at the top in kind of your hero content. And then this is definitely in that like tell me more category. And particularly for composers, when I'm evaluating composers, I'm looking at, can you do the primary genre that we need to for this project? Are you really good at it? And can you show me maybe even a few different angles on that same genre, particularly when I'm looking for a specialist? Sometimes we're not. Sometimes we're looking for generalists, and it's like, can you do a variety of things? And if that's your skill set, that you're more of a generalist, which is more of my thing, then you can go broad at the beginning. But assuming that you're a little bit more of a specialist or kind of closer to the specialist side, showing, 2 or 3 tracks that are kind of in a similar vein or that would get you very similar projects is one way to go. And then having some extra details of like, I can also do jazz, or like having some little extra and surprising content past the first 3 is something that I find enjoyable for myself personally. But let's take a look at what we have here for these tracks. Okay. I'm going to just skim around for a second and then we'll come back to a few things here. Sounding great so far. Oh, that's fun. Very cool. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit of like how would I normally approach a page like this, and maybe that'll reveal some of what you want to account for with your audience. Now, it differs per person, so this is not a blanket rule across the board. But typically, if I came to a page and I wasn't doing a live stream, like how would I typically evaluate this? I would, even for the sake of it, like let's just reload the page. I would come to a page, click on this.
Con la maldición de Perú.
Skim, skim, skim.
Combate final para coronar a un único mente. Abrió un agujero.
Then I'd go and I'd click on something else. By the way, like when you've been reading waveforms for a long time, you're looking for dynamicism. You're looking for like, what's the interesting thing? And this, again, may not be everybody, but just like having composed a bunch, worked with libraries a bunch, had to kind of music supervise for various projects. Like you're going to skim based on the waveform. You're looking for what's interesting. And I'm right now in the headspace of answering the question, do you have the skill? Then I'm moving on to the next one, skipping ahead. So I'm like hearing a ton of variety in that one, which is interesting, but also like can be a little confusing at front. I'm not going to listen to a bunch of it in this headspace. I'm just like plowing through the whole thing. I would say that this section has caught my attention quite a bit because I'm in evaluating your style. And again, this is, it's not probably fair. There's probably like misunderstandings. There's probably things I'm missing, whatever. I'm trying to get a pulse. I'm like, okay, do you have the skill from a composition perspective, using a DAW, you're mixing and mastering and production? And then I'm really trying to understand, like, what genre are you good at? And I'm getting, and again, might be totally misunderstanding, but there's data in that too. I'm getting like, okay, there's a little bit of like world music, a bit of the orchestral stuff, a little bit of cinematic orchestral stuff in that modern production that goes along with it. You're an eclectic composer. That's how I'm perceiving this. You're able to navigate a bunch of different instruments and stuff. That'll probably help with player fatigue. Just the interesting style of composition kind of keeps things varied, and there's less of something for someone to fatigue from. This moment here in the Crusades main title, that's where I'm finally getting that, like, okay, bombastic, maybe closer to that AAA vibe kind of a thing. He can handle that. He can do that sort of a thing. A lot of the other tracks, they have long intros. They don't necessarily get into the action. They're great tracks. So I would say I'm enjoying it. It's a good listen, but I'm just trying to share a little bit of the headspace that I'm in while I'm going through this, because it may affect, like, hey, do you want to put something at the top that is closer to... Sorry, where to go? I'm missing it. It's somewhere in here. At any rate, it's like you might choose to put something that's a little bit more intricate and dense and kind of showing off your skills. Maybe consider putting some of that up front as opposed to... Now, this depends on what kind of gigs you're trying to get. If you're trying to create that slower pace and that kind of thing, maybe that's a good strategy. Anyways, just some thoughts on it. The composition is great. The production is great. Like, all of the chops are there. I think this is mostly for me just a conversation around, is the packaging getting to where you want it to go? Yeah. Climax at the beginning, leave a great impression. I think it's one strategy. Like, is it a perfect strategy? Probably not. But I do feel like you saw how I was just like clicking around the waveform, looking for the bigger moments, the dynamic moments. It's just something to keep in mind. But very nicely done on this. I mean, I see that you have lots of other material. The website is cool. Love the transitions. The photos and everything are very professional. It's certainly like a clear aesthetic that's there. So nicely done on that. Really, really well done. All right. We have got here. Oh, okay. Now this one is interesting for a lot of different reasons here. I actually need to reload the page for this one. So let's take a look here at Addy. Now I am so torn about this. I hate this every single time. 10-second rule, 3-second rule. This is so cool, and there's such an aesthetic, and part of me thinks, well, maybe if there was a way to present something that took more time, this is the way to do it. So I'm really, really torn on this, but part of me just feels like if that loading screen is not genuinely what it takes to load the page, and you're just wasting my time because of the aesthetic of an anticipatory loading screen, please don't do that. But I also I really love this super cool and interesting, and it would definitely stand out. So I'm torn. Take that for whatever you want, but like, really cool. And then also maybe wasting my time. It's really hard to tell. Let's see here. I've got to click on something. Oh my. Okay. The zooming in thing is a little disorienting for me. I'm going to start with demo. Oh, wow. This is like a completely different website. Beautiful, by the way. That looks super cool. Let's take a look. Wow. Super cool. Wowzers. That, okay. I feel like this is a situation where my critiques are going to be very persnickety, if that's a word. Overall, like as far as the content is concerned, really, really nicely done. I feel like you got straight into the action. You didn't waste my time with your name or anything like that. You left that to the end. Really, really nicely done. I think that there may be an advantage to, because the website is Addy Sounds, and when I come here, it just says, I'm Addy, sound designer. There may be a benefit for you to consider putting your full name earlier and not burying that. Because I think using your full name kind of makes sense here, right? You like the experience is solid. I don't like the zooming thing. That just feels a little bit nauseous to me. But I think putting your name maybe in full there would be good. I'm so torn on, making it so there's a cool loading screen and this is like an awesome looking map thing. But now I have to load a thing, wait 10 seconds, click on demo, wait another couple, a second. I get to this screen. When I play the clip and then move my mouse off of it, I'm seeing the background through it. This is a minor thing, but I feel like you're kind of ruining the immersion a little bit for the piece. So something to consider there, just from a website design perspective. Like I dig the aesthetic. I didn't realize that it was a scroll down thing. I don't know how this works on mobile and how it translates. There might just be a little bit of a consideration for, there's no header. The navigation is not typical, which is part of what's charming about it, but it's also running the risk that somebody wouldn't have heard. Your design reel is the star. Sorry, I realized I wasn't sharing my screen, but your design reel is the star. So I'd be a little bit careful about like you're burying it a bit. I think that there's just like a lot of little micro friction points that might not be working, even though like there's, optimized, but definitely needs some more work. I mean, it's beautiful. Like it's really cool. And there's aesthetic. So that's why I'm so torn on this feedback, but it's kind of like, I've told you folks, like the main thing here is answering the question, do you have the skill? Now, it looks like you might, based on what you're saying and other things, you might have a skill in website design and like other things you've got skills in, which is really cool and kind of interesting to me personally, just because I love working with generalists. But I do feel like you're maybe accidentally burying the primary skill that they're looking for under the skill of potentially website design or aesthetic and font choice and like all that kind of stuff. And so I think there's just maybe an opportunity there to focus on why your audience is there, even though you're clearly skilled in a lot of different things. So yeah, I mean, this is such a cool interface, but there's also just like some things that are maybe risky about it, of like more traditionally, okay, at least I can drag and slide, but it's sometimes helpful to like, there's an arrow button just in case someone doesn't think to click and drag and slide. Sometimes you might be dealing with, someone who would hire you. They might even be like a little bit older and, they might not think to navigate and explore in this way, even though like I love the parallaxing and this is just like super cool. But I do wonder if there's like a bit of trimming the fat without diminishing the fact that you've got aesthetic tastes and other things like that. So let's see, you said here, so when I submit my CV, I submit 2 links in the header profile and the demo reel. The demo reel just directly takes them to the video. Do you think that's helpful? I do think that's helpful. If assuming it's taking them right to this page, where they're exactly seeing what I'm seeing. I think I do see the arrow there, but there's no down arrow either, so it only brings me back up. I think that there's just a bit of attention circulation that you can kind of consider here. It's like, I think it's helpful if you're sending them a link, boom, here's my sound design reel, super strong work, like loved it. I'm not even going to dive into notes on it because I just think that it's like That's really good. It's really solid. It's really strong. You can totally get work from that. I'm sure that you have. I hope that you have, you know. But I think that there's just a bit of a tension circulation that you need to consider here, because you've got gold. Oh, see, like, I love this. This is super charming. I didn't even realize there was more. I'm just lingering for longer than maybe a normal user would. And I'm experimenting. And a normal user might not do that. And so I think that there's just a few like navigation things that would totally make this go further. I mean, this is super cool. Like, this is awesome. Sound designer who loves bringing the worlds to life through sound. Worked on releases indie, casino games, creating everything from emotional sound effects, UI. Yeah, I mean, you've got the gold. I think it's just like how you present it. There's a couple little tweaks there that'll make it go even further. But I like super impressed, like super impressed. I'm just worried that some people won't get the gold because of a few things with your navigation and kind of how you're presenting it, your name not being present at the beginning and stuff like that. I think that the aesthetic change between the loading screen, this map, this aesthetic here, and then the footer being like a completely different aesthetic is like a little bit all over the place. Not crazy all over the place, but there's a few aesthetic things. I feel like this is super cohesive with this section with the parallax, which is cool, and this section with the clouds. That all works great. There's a visual cohesion problem between the loading screen, this thing, and then the footer. But like, you've got the goods. It's just all of these notes are on packaging. So anyways, that's super cool. Like, really good. Okay. I know that we've only got a couple people who have kind of stayed to the end here. I didn't get to all of the questions and things that were asked. I just want to hit one here from Joanna Martinez, and then I'm going to roll these over into the next audio jam, which is happening next Thursday on the 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And let's see here. Joanna said, I have so many questions. I'd love to know what your journey has been like to get to where you are today. If you could give me one piece of professional advice to your past self, what would it be? I think I won't tell the full story here. You can check out, I did an AirCon talk last year, and you can check that out on YouTube. Just search for David Fairfield AirCon, and you should be able to find it. And that goes a little bit more in depth into my story. But I think in terms of advice to my past self, I think that the main advice I would have is that feedback is not about you as a person. It's about how you improve the work, which is how you get to the goal that you're shooting for. I used to personally be very personally hurt by feedback. I think I took it personally because it was hard for me to disassociate the work from who I was and what I was really passionate about. And now I see feedback as this beautiful thing that you can actually use to improve your skills, to better serve the audience, to better serve the client, and for objectivity that we often lose when we've spent a lot of time just like zeroing in tunnel vision on a certain scene or moment. And so my advice to myself would be not to be afraid of feedback. It's actually a liberator rather than a constrictor. So this concludes our second audio jam for the month of May. We're going to be meeting again next week and then the following, and then that's it. So if you have any additional questions or things that you're wanting to go through, feel free to send me a DM on LinkedIn or to comment on this video when it's up here on YouTube. And I'll look at all of that stuff and include things in the next one. Thank you so much for everyone for submitting, for taking the time to share your work. It's amazing to see what everybody is making. And I hope that you got some lessons today that you can take into things and just find that next little rung on the ladder that you can kind of keep on working on to showcase your skills and ultimately get the work and the opportunities that you're seeking. Thank you so much, and hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you around.